Hi, I'm Tamsin. I paid for the house, the meals, the boat tours, everything. And yet, the night we sat down to dinner, my mother looked at me and said, "This trip isn't about you." They wore shirts with everyone's name but mine, gave my concert ticket away to a stranger, replaced me in photos, in bedrooms, in the story they told the world. But what hurt more than the erasure was how natural they made it look. So I did the one thing they never expected. I stopped funding the fantasy. Ever wonder what it takes for a woman to freeze her own family out of her life? And her wallet? I arrived in Destin late afternoon on a Thursday, the sky leaning toward gold as the sun dipped closer to the water. My suitcase rolled awkwardly across the gravel driveway, the wheels catching in loose stones. I could hear laughter from the porch before I even reached the steps. Vera opened the door just wide enough for a quick hug that never really landed. "You made it," she said like I'd dropped in uninvited. Behind her, Callista was already snapping selfies with Leora and Declan, the filters already smoothing out their smiles. She didn't even glance in my direction. The house was beautiful, clean, curated, coastal chic. Everything matched except me. I placed my bag by the guest room door, the smallest one in the back, and took a breath before joining them on the patio. It wasn't that I expected fanfare, but I thought maybe something more than "you made it." Dinner that evening was grilled snapper, corn on the cob, and watermelon salad, Callista's idea. The table was set for 8, even though only 6 of us were there. Declan had brought his cousin for the first night, but he'd left before I arrived. My seat was next to Leora, across from Vera. Conversation flowed easily about Leora's new swim class, Callista's latest brand deal, Vera's insightful take on the news. I nodded where appropriate, offered to pass the butter, and smiled too much. Halfway through Callista's retelling of some hilarious airport mix-up, Vera suddenly turned to me, napkin folded neatly in her lap. Her voice was syrupy sweet. "This trip isn't about you, Tamsin," she said, cutting through the table like a knife. "Please don't make it about yourself." The table fell into a strange hush. No one gasped. No one defended me. Forks still moved, glasses clinked. Even Leora just looked down into her lemonade like she hoped it might swallow her. I managed a half smile, bit into a piece of corn that suddenly tasted like nothing, and nodded as if I agreed. I didn't speak for the rest of the meal. I didn't trust what might come out. That night, I stared at the ceiling fan blades spinning above me, counting their rotations until I lost track. The next morning, the house buzzed with plans. Vera had laid out matching t-shirts for the family, navy blue, with Jennings Beach Week 2024, printed in cursive across the chest. I found mine still in the shopping bag, folded neatly on the counter. A sticky note stuck to the plastic read "Tamsin." When I held it up, Vera laughed. "They must be auto-corrected your name, sweetie. You know how tech is." No one else seemed to notice, or care. We walked to the dock together. Callista held Leora's hand, Declan carried the cooler, and I trailed behind with the towels. A young man managing the morning tours approached us with a clipboard. "You with the Jennings family?" he asked, scanning the group. Before I could answer, Vera smiled and said, "Oh, she's just tagging along." The man nodded, like that explained everything, and turned to count life vests. I stood there, blinking. The wind pushed hair into my mouth. No one turned back. I stayed behind while they boarded the boat, claiming I had a slight headache. Vera nodded, didn't offer anything more. On the walk back alone, my sandals rubbed blisters into my heels, and my throat burned from saying nothing. "I paid for the Airbnb deposit," I muttered aloud, voice catching in the sea air. "I shipped Leora's birthday bike. And Im just tagging along?" But I didn't confront anyone. Not yet. Instead, I made coffee, sat on the porch swing, and watched the sky shift from seafoam to cerulean as the sun rose higher. "It's only day 1, I told myself. Maybe tomorrow will be better." But even I didn't believe that anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. I drafted a letter that made silence into a sound they couldn't ignore. The message started soft, then steady. Baby girl, I know they make you feel like you're not needed, but I saw you. I always saw you. We sat down for lunch the next day at a waterfront spot with picnic tables, umbrellas fluttering in the breeze, and the smell of fried oysters wafting through the salt air. Callista had chosen the place. Very local, very authentic, she said, with the confidence of someone who had skimmed Yelp reviews while tanning. The waiter dropped off the check without asking who was taking it. That's when Callista, cheerful as ever, announced loudly enough for the nearby tables to hear, "Tamsin's got this one. She always does." Leora clapped her hands and said, "Auntie Tamsin pays for everything." Everyone laughed. Vera gave me that familiar look, part proud, part expectant, and said, "You're always so generous." I didn't argue. I didn't even blink. I just pulled my card out and tapped it like I had so many times before. The screen flashed, $413.78. I told myself it didn't matter. Told myself it was just lunch. Told myself I was being included. But it felt more like I was paying rent for a seat at their table. Back at the house, while they napped or scrolled their phones, I opened my banking app. The boat tour Callista had mentioned earlier, just a little treat Declan and I, booked for the weekend, had already been paid for. And it wasn't Declan's card. It wasn't Callista's either. It was mine. A $780 charge, labeled Jennings Charters. I'd given Vera access to my backup card 2 years ago in case of emergency. Apparently, keeping Callista's couple's getaway afloat counted as one. That night, while everyone gathered on the patio to play card games, Callista uploaded a collage to her social feed. Family is everything. It was a carousel sunlit moments of them laughing at lunch, riding bikes along the boardwalk, hugging on the dock. The photo taken during lunch-own of the most liked showed everyone at the table mid-toast. I wasn't in it. I'd taken the picture. A comment popped up beneath the post. "Where's Tamsin?" It was visible for all of 30 seconds before it vanished. I added my own, just a line. Just enough. Photographers don't count, I guess. It disappeared within minutes. No reply, no call. Just more hearts and clapping emojis from people who didn't know better. I left the patio quietly, walked to the edge of the beach behind the house. The wind smelled like sunscreen and low tide. The moon floated above the water like it was keeping a secret. I sat on the porch swing and opened the family group chat. Dozens of messages I hadn't seen, plans I wasn't included in, inside jokes, voice notes from Leora, a meme Vera didn't understand but laughed at anyway. There were spreadsheets for meal prep, links to pre-ordered groceries, a shared folder titled Jennings Memories 2024. Not one picture with me in it. I thought back to last April, when I funded Leora's entire birthday party. The bounce house, the catered cupcakes, the glitter face painter. Vera had promised, "Well, make sure everyone knows it was you." 2 days later, Callista posted a video recap. Caption, "Auntie Callista pulled off another perfect day. I remember watching it alone in my apartment." I didn't comment, didn't text, just sat there and let the silence settle around me. Tonight felt the same. I whispered into the dark, more to myself than anyone else. You don't get credit for keeping a system running when no one sees you as part of it. And that was it. That was the thing. I hadn't been forgotten. I hadn't slipped their minds. I'd been carved out erased with intent and precision. They didn't lose me. They'd never counted me to begin with. That night, I opened a voicemail I hadn't dared to touch in 3 years. It wasn't just a message. It was the only voice that never made me feel small. I lay in bed, face lit only by the soft glow of my phone screen. Everyone else had gone to sleep hours ago, and the house had settled into that strange kind of silence that only comes when people are too proud to apologize out loud. I opened my voicemail folder, not the one for new calls, but the one labeled Don't Delete. There it was, Raymond, my father. The message had been sitting there for 139 days. I counted once, never had the nerve to open it again. But tonight, after being erased from yet another group photo and watching my name vanish from a comment thread like it had never existed, I tapped play. Baby girl, I know they make you feel like you're not needed. But I saw you. I always saw you. His voice was slower than I remembered. Deeper. Not because it had changed, but because I had forgotten how much safety lived in it. He talked about a dinner I had hosted years ago. The one where Vera showed up late and left early. Where Callista made a toast that somehow forgot I'd organized the entire evening. You came early, stayed late, cleaned dishes you didn't dirty. That's who you are. But I need you to remember, you don't have to prove your place to people who would rather forget you than thank you. I listened twice, then again. I closed my eyes and let his voice live inside me for just a few more minutes. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even emotional. It was factual. He saw me. I didn't cry. I didn't feel broken. I just adjusted. Like my spine straightened itself. The next morning, I went out to the back porch while the rest of the house was still tucked in. Vera's curtains were drawn. Callista's door was slightly open, fan humming from inside. I carried my coffee out, wrapped a towel around my shoulders against the breeze, and sat in the swing chair. Leora padded outside in socks and a long t-shirt, rubbing her eyes. "Aunt Tamsin?" she asked, voice still sticky with sleep. "Do you need help with money?" I blinked. "What?" "Grandma said you always waste it. That's why you work all the time, right?" I stared at her, this kid who only knew what she'd been told, who repeated things like facts because no one had told her they were lies. I didn't correct her. Didn't tell her Vera was wrong. I just smiled and said, "No, honey, I don't need help. I need boundaries." She nodded like she understood, then wandered back inside without another word. That hurt more than anything Callista had ever said to my face. It wasn't cruelty, it was conditioning. They weren't just ignoring me, they were rewriting me in real time, planting it in the minds of people too young to question the script. Later, after the morning bustle began and everyone got ready for another overplanned bonding activity, I went for a walk along the shoreline. I didn't bring my phone, just myself and the wind. I thought about how many times I'd rewritten myself to fit. How I'd bitten my tongue so hard it nearly became muscle memory. How every time I heard, "Don't make it about you," I made myself smaller. And for what? So they could assign my kindness to someone flashier? Louder? More photogenic? Every time I said it's no big deal, I'd buried another version of myself. The quiet one, the reliable one, the background character in a show she paid for, but never got to star in. I reached the end of the cove, where the rocks jutted up into the water and the waves cracked softly against them. I sat on a large stone, let my feet dangle, and took a deep breath that I hadn't realized I'd been holding since Colorado. That voicemail wasn't just reassurance, it was evidence that once someone who mattered saw me clearly, not as sensitive or complicated or dramatic, but as someone who showed up. I whispered to the wind, "I'm not leaving because they didn't include me. I'm leaving because they're pretending I never did." And in that moment, for the first time since arriving, I didn't feel erased. I felt real. She was telling another version of me, one she'd crafted carefully for an outsider. But this time, I didn't just listen, I documented. It was mid-afternoon, and the kitchen smelled like lime and cut cantaloupe. I was slicing fruit quietly, trying to stay out of the way, blending into the rhythm of the house like I always had. From where I stood, I could hear voices drifting in through the open screen door, Vera's tone, syrupy and performative, the one she used when explaining me to strangers. "She's always been sensitive," she said with a light chuckle. "We've tried everything, but she sees things that aren't even there. Drama seems to follow her." A second voice joined Callista, naturally. "Remember her graduation?" she said, like it was a punchline. She cried because her name wasn't on the banner. She made the whole day about herself. The knife in my hand paused mid-slice. My fingers didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. I just stood still. Then, with 2 taps, I opened my voice memo app and hit record. I didn't speak. I didn't walk out to confront them. I didn't defend myself. I just let them keep going, spinning a version of me that sounded polished, familiar, rehearsed. It wasn't the lies that cued it was the ease. The way the words rolled off their tongues like they'd said them before. like they believed them more with each retelling. A few hours later, Leora ran into the kitchen, still wearing her dolphin print swimsuit. "Aunt Tamsin! We're going on a dolphin boat! Grandma said she booked it just for us." I smiled, not wide enough to mean it. "That's great, sweetie." She skipped off to change, her feet slapping lightly against the tile. I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app. The charge was there, already processed, $675, billed to the card Vera still had access to. I'd given it to her years ago just for emergencies. Apparently, a dolphin tour for Callista and Declan now qualified. I didn't ask them about it. Didn't point out the irony of me paying for an event I wasn't invited to. Instead, I took a screenshot and saved it to a new folder. Emotional Overdrafts. I titled the image, July 4th Tour. Confronting them felt pointless. They weren't debating reality. They were performing a play. I wasn't in the cast. I was just the sponsor. Back in the hallway, I walked past their rooms. Coordinated outfits were already laid out, matching linen shorts, pastel button-downs, even a new pair of sunglasses on Declan's nightstand, still with the tag on. From the living room, Callista's voice floated out. "Don't forget the Instagram captions, short and sweet. Tag the charter, too." No one asked if I was coming. No one noticed when I didn't pack a beach bag. They loaded up the van in the driveway, with excited chatter, and posed for pictures by the palm trees. I stayed behind, sitting on the porch swing with a glass of water and my phone. I replayed the audio recording from earlier. My voice wasn't in it, but I was everywhere in it. Every pause Vera used to sound compassionate, every fake laugh Callista forced it, was all theater. And it finally stepped into the role of audience, not cast. I whispered into the quiet, "If you're going to write me out, I'll make sure the real version survives." Then I saved the recording, uploaded it to my cloud, and titled it, Unedited, July 3rd, 2:12 p.m. That evening, over dry chicken and forced laughter, they turned their eyes on me and dared to ask why I was ruining the trip. The table was set just as Callista liked it. White linens, flickering battery candles, napkins folded into tiny sailboats. Dinner was grilled chicken and some half-burned cornbread. Vera insisted on finishing herself, as if overcooking things gave her control. I carried plates to the table, aligned the cutlery, and topped off the lemonade pitcher. Not a single thank you, not even eye contact. Leora was doing a little cheer routine on the grass near the patio, humming a song from the dolphin tour it financed, but never attended. Callista's phone was clipped to a tripod, capturing natural footage for her next family reel. Her camera lens swept over the table twice. Neither time did it linger on me. I sat silently, chewing through my meal. I wasn't planning to speak unless someone forced me to. They did. Vera started. She set down her fork and folded her hands like she was about to offer a prayer. "Tamsin," she said with that brittle voice she used when pretending concern, "you've seemed a bit distant this week, not your usual self." Before I could respond, Callista leaned forward, elbows on the table like we were at a reunion intervention. "We all came here to reconnect, to make memories," she said, eyes narrowing slightly. "You're making it really hard to do that." My jaw clenched, but I didn't raise my voice. I simply said, "Uncomfortable or uncooperative?" Vera blinked. "That's not what I said." "No," I replied, "but is exactly what you meant." The silence that followed was so heavy it made the paper lanterns sway. Leora paused mid-cheer and looked over. Declan busied himself with cutting more chicken. Nobody jumped in to defend them this time. I reached into my pocket, opened the voice memos app, and hit play. From my phone came Vera's voice, syrupy and smooth. "She's always been sensitive. We've tried everything, Callista. She cried at her graduation, over her name not being on the banner, made the whole day about herself." I placed the phone on the table, let it play without commentary, without context, just sound and truth. When it ended, I looked up. "You've been telling a version of me for so long, you've started to believe it's the only one that exists," I said. "But I've been the one cleaning up behind your stories, fixing the mess. making sure the gaps don't show. No one spoke. Even Vera, usually so quick to spin, seemed to have lost her words. You want me to apologize for making things uncomfortable, I added, but the discomfort isn't mine. It's yours because I'm not shrinking anymore. Declan put his fork down finally. I think I'm gonna head inside, he mumbled, eyes locked on his plate. I finished the last bite of my chicken. No dramatic exit, no grand speech, just stillness. I stood, picked up my plate, and walked toward the kitchen door. Vera began to say something, maybe another correction, maybe another manipulation. I didn't care. I lifted one hand with a single finger raised, not rude, not hostile, just a signal. Enough. Inside, I rinsed my plate, stacked it in the dishwasher, and toweled my hands dry. Then I went to my room, pulled out my laptop, and opened the shared family account dashboard. Logged in, breathed. For the next hour, I combed through spreadsheets, reservation logs, and automated payments. No one knocked, no one called. I wasn't being dramatic anymore. I was documenting the truth they'd tried to delete. Declan had taken my seat. Callista had taken my credit. But I'd taken the receipt. I woke to the scent of coffee already brewed and the hollow kind of laughter that comes when people are too aware they're being watched. The family was buzzing. The concert was today. The one I'd spent weeks planning, months ahead, pre-booking 6 seats, sending confirmation emails, even adjusting schedules so Vera wouldn't miss her Tuesday water aerobics back home. I hadn't been thanked, but I didn't expect to be. Still, I didn't expect to be forgotten. I walked into the kitchen just in time to hear Callista say, "It's going to be perfect." 6 seats, Declan and I up front, Mom and Leora just behind. I didn't hear the rest. I only heard the count. "Where's my seat?" I asked, quiet but firm. The room stilled for a beat. Vera turned from the sink, drying her hands with a dish towel. "We thought you weren't interested anymore," she said in that voice she used with cashiers and waiters. Overly polite, built for dismissal. "You've seemed so distant," Callista chimed in without looking up from her phone. "We gave it to Aunt Marie's neighbor's son. You know, that cute one who's staying down the block." I nodded, slowly, like I was trying to understand a foreign language. I opened my Venmo app, scrolled back 3 weeks, and there it was, $740. The note read, "Full payment, family concert night." I didn't say a word. Not because I didn't have one, but because silence, wielded well, is louder than any accusation. I went upstairs, needing air that wasn't recycled through fake grace. When I opened my bedroom door, I froze. My suitcase was gone. In its place was a note, scribbled in Vera's familiar cursive. "Hope you don't mind." Switched with Declan so he can sleep next to Callista. "Yours is the guest room near the laundry. Love, Mom." The new room, if you could call it that, was a narrow box beside the utility closet. No windows. A twin mattress that sank in the middle. The scent of chlorine and dryer sheets clung to the air like mildew trying to masquerade as clean. I stood there, holding the note. Then I folded it slowly, slid it into my pocket, and walked back to retrieve my suitcase. It was parked against the wall outside the laundry room, zipped but slightly unlatched, like even it didn't want to stay. I didn't cry. I didn't pack in a fury. I moved with robotic calm, folding the clothes I had just unpacked 2 days ago. Shirt, pants, dress I never got to wear. I zipped the suitcase closed, then opened my laptop. Airline app, return flight, available seat zone left for the next morning. I booked it. Then I logged into the shared family spreadsheet Vera had insisted we keep for budget transparency. One by one, I removed my name from every section. Lodging, car rental, dinner plans, gift contributions, grocery rotations. I clicked Leave Folder without hesitation. After that, I sat down and drafted a message just for myself. Not to send, not to show. Just to name the thing I now knew with certainty. You weren't erased, you were replaced, and now, you're reclaiming. That night, no one knocked on my door. No one noticed my absence at dinner. No one asked why I'd skipped dessert or where I'd gone after lunch, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel hurt by their silence. I matched it. Before I left, I did one more thing. A single click that would rewrite the rules they thought I still played by. The first sign? A declined transaction. The second? Their expressions when I didn't offer to fix it. I woke up early, though I hadn't set an alarm. Maybe it was the weight of knowing I wouldn't be here much longer. The suitcase by the door was already packed. All I had to do was wait for morning to come fully, like waiting for a curtain to fall on a show I hadn't auditioned for, but was forced to act in anyway. At breakfast, I kept to myself. They didn't seem to notice. Or maybe they were pretending not to. Callista had brought something to the table, not food, not conversation, but a photo album. I had it printed as a surprise, she beamed. For Mom. Vera's eyes lit up. Oh, Callista, you didn't have to. They flipped through the pages, narrating each memory like it had happened only to them. Leora and Grandma at the dock. Declan and I on the paddleboards. 4th of July dinner, what a spread. I sipped my coffee in silence, knowing full well I'd been present for all of it. But when my own face finally appeared, arms full of towels, sun in my eyes, a rare smile not yet rubbed raw by the week's tension, I noticed the caption beneath it. Unidentified guest, LOL. The laughter that followed was casual, comfortable, as if none of them considered what it might feel like to be unnamed in your own family's scrapbook. I didn't laugh. I didn't ask questions. I didn't correct them. I stood, rinsed my mug, and went for a walk. It was humid outside, the kind of heat that sticks behind your knees and on the back of your neck. I made my way toward the resort's lobby for a coffee refill, thinking maybe a change of scenery would rinse the taste of that caption from my mouth. I had barely stepped into the lobby when one of the young staff members smiled at me. Hey there, are you one of the housekeepers? The Jennings family said you'd be around. I stared at him for a breath longer than necessary. Then I responded with clarity, not malice. No, I am the Jennings family. His smile faltered. I didn't wait for a response. I walked past him, grabbed my coffee, and stepped outside. Sitting on the stone bench near the parking lot, I opened my phone and typed a single line into my Notes app. Let them explain this version without me. When I got back to the house, it was mostly quiet. Callista and Vera were prepping dinner, humming to some acoustic playlist. Declan was half asleep in a hammock, and Leora was on her tablet, headphones in. I walked past them and into my room, closed the door, sat at the desk. I opened my laptop and logged into my financial dashboard. Then I began. First, I froze the shared grocery delivery account, the one they used weekly, billed to my name. Then Vera's Uber profile disabled. Streaming services? Gone. The spreadsheet folder for the family reunion ID set up last spring? I revoked access. One by one, I stripped away every resource they never thanked me for, but never hesitated to use. Then I opened the last tab. The family credit card. The one I'd co-signed. The one they believed was endlessly renewable, like my patience. I stared at the active status for a moment. Then I clicked. Freeze. Status. Inactive. No announcement. No ceremony. Just a quiet click a final punctuation mark. Then I leaned back, set my hands on my lap, and let the quiet come. Not relief, not vengeance, clarity. They didn't know it yet. But by dinner, everything they thought was still under control would stop working. They didn't know it yet, but by dinner, everything they thought was still under control would stop working. The trip ended in chaos for them. Accusations flying like seagulls startled off the shore, flapping and loud, spiraling into panic. For me, it ended with quiet. A closed door, a zipped suitcase, and a one-way ticket to someplace where I wouldn't have to shrink to fit or audition for a seat at someone else's table. I woke before dawn, not from restlessness, but because for the first time in a long while, I'd slept deeply enough to wake early. Not out of anxiety, out of clarity. The air in the house felt strange. Still, as if it, too, was holding its breath, aware something was shifting. something final. The kind of shift you can't undo with apologies, or group texts, or family brunches. A slow turning of a page that won't flip back. My suitcase waited by the door, zipped and standing tall, like it knew we were both leaving something behind. The floors groaned under my steps as I made my way through the dim hallway. These old beach homes always had floors like that, honest in their age, unwilling to let you pass unnoticed. But I didn't care if the wood creaked. I wasn't hiding anymore. In the kitchen, with the hum of the refrigerator for company, I folded a note in half, then again, and tucked it under the salt shaker. Handled what I needed. No further responses required. I didn't write it to be cruel. I wrote it because it was true. I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't look back. The ride to the airport was soft, muted. I said nothing to the driver, except, "Thank you," when he picked up my bag. He offered to avoid traffic. I told him the scenic route was fine. Let the coastline pass. Let the waves do their thing, crashing and retreating. Always busy, never still. I watched the ocean from the passenger seat and let it become a metaphor I didn't need to name. At the terminal, I sipped lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. I opened my phone and tapped a folder tucked neatly into my email inbox. Proof no one asked for. Inside, screenshots, every receipt, every flight, every dinner reservation, every spa booking, each one bearing my name, while their photos got the tags, the likes, the compliments. While I stood just outside the frame, holding the phone, holding the plan, holding everything together. I didn't open the photos. I didn't need to relive it. Just seeing the folder was enough. It was real. It happened. I hadn't imagined the labor. I just finally decided not to volunteer it anymore. Somewhere over Mississippi, while my plane hummed toward Dallas, things started to unravel behind me. Vera tried to check out of the resort. Her card declined. She tried again. Declined. Callista, likely mid-brunch, attempting to order vegan groceries from her phone, got an access denied message she'd never seen before. Declan's phone buzzed with a failed car rental notification. The wheels, so used to turning without question, were locking in place. The family shared car dance, funded by me, maintained by me, protected by me, was frozen. By the time we landed, my phone was vibrating with the fallout. I turned it on at baggage claim. The screen lit up with a storm of notifications. Vera, what did you do? Callista, we're stuck. This is not funny. Vera again. Is this your idea of revenge? Callista, we can't even call an Uber. Fix it. Now. I didn't respond. I read them carefully, as if I were reading news about strangers. Then, without any anger, I tapped delete thread. No fireworks. No sense of triumph. Just weight, shifting, space, clearing, peace, blooming. In the terminal lounge waiting for my connecting flight, I opened the Notes app and began typing. My fingers didn't hesitate. I was never the problem. I was the platform. And I finally stepped off. I sat back, breathing in the strange calm of release, of no longer being available, of no longer playing a role I didn't audition for. A flight attendant walked past and offered me water. I took it, nodded, not in smugness, in stillness. I didn't think about Vera pacing, or Callista sending frantic messages, or Declan trying to keep the peace when he never once kept me safe. I didn't picture them. I pictured myself. A self untethered, unburdened. A self no longer writing the script for people who never gave her a speaking part. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even payback. It was a reset, the kind that doesn't come with a dramatic soundtrack, but with a quiet exhale, the kind where you don't slam the door, you remove the hinges entirely. Before I powered my phone down for the next leg of the flight, I checked one last screen. Family shared card status, permanently closed. No reactivation available, no appeals, just done. A few hours later, the sun dipped behind unfamiliar clouds as my new flight descended into a city I hadn't planned on, but had chosen. They'd booked round-trip tickets, assuming I'd return with them. But I wasn't on their itinerary anymore. For the first time, I was fully, finally, on my own. The first morning back in Denver greeted me with a silence I didn't expect to find comforting. No vibrating phones tossed on countertops. No group texts buzzing with passive-aggressive emojis. No color-coded lists stuck to the fridge with cutesy magnets shaped like avocados. Just quiet. Real, living quiet. The sun cut soft gold across my kitchen, pouring through the gauzy curtains I had hung without anyone's opinion. I was barefoot in my favorite robe, the one with the stitched initials that no longer felt ironic. The scent of strong black coffee curled into the air, brewed in the machine I bought, maintained, and like most things in my life, now cleaned myself. I didn't expect a knock on the door. I wasn't waiting for an apology wrapped in flowers, or a voicemail with just the right inflection of remorse. But my phone still lit up, as if the past was reaching its hand under the door. 47 new messages. At the top of the screen, a notification from a group chat I hadn't seen since the week everything broke apart. Group name changed, Family Healing. I wasn't in the group. There was no invitation, just a quiet exclusion that somehow still spoke volumes. They weren't asking me back. They were building a new narrative, one I wasn't welcome in, but also no longer needed to be. Vera's voice filled my voicemail next. "We didn't raise you to be cold," she began, like that one sentence would pull me back into orbit, as if that was the final word on what love should look like. I didn't listen past that. I didn't need to. I pressed delete without saving, without replaying. Closure, I had finally learned, wasn't something they were ever going to offer, but I had stopped asking for it. Later that afternoon, I sat at my desk, staring at a folder on my desktop titled, "Closure is Mine Now." It wasn't poetic when I named it, just functional. Inside were the remnants of war, screenshots of texts they thought I hadn't seen, call logs that proved their absences, bank statements tied to my stolen contributions, the voice memo from that night in the kitchen when my father's words slipped out unfiltered, and of course, that one photo from the party. The one where I was labeled as an unidentified guest. I hovered my mouse over the folder. I didn't need to reopen it. I already knew what was inside. I'd memorized it like a tragic monologue. But something shifted in me that day. Not vengeance, not even sadness, just clarity. I highlighted every file, right-clicked, renamed the folder, archived, no longer active. I sat back in my chair and let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. There was a time when I would have hesitated, afraid that letting go meant giving them permission to rewrite history. But it wasn't erasure. It was release. Those files were no longer evidence. They were echoes. And I didn't need echoes to tell my story anymore. A few days later, I wandered into a tucked-away bookstore Kath had never noticed before, nestled between an antique shop and a used record store. It had dusty corners and handwritten chalkboard menus, the kind of place you don't find unless you're lost or finally free. I ordered a strong black coffee and chose a seat by the window where the sunlight spilled like warm silk across the table. The barista, a girl in her 20s with glitter on her eyelids, handed me my cup and tilted her head. "I love your earrings," she said. "They look like they mean something." I reached up and touched the tiny silver moons dangling from my ear Sones had found at a flea market in Santa Fe 2 years ago. I hadn't worn them in ages. "They do," I said, and smiled. Not for her approval, not because I needed to charm anyone, but because they did mean something, just not to anyone but me. Near the front register, I spotted a stand with travel brochures. One caught my eye, Solo Women's Hiking Retreat Zion National Park. I flipped it open, heart oddly steady. I read the details, then read them again. The wind whistled slightly outside the cafe door, brushing a fallen leaf past my boot. I took out my phone, scanned the QR code, and registered. There was no need to tell anyone, no need to justify the cost, ask for time off, or seek permission. It was my name, my card, my decision, and that was the most radical thing of all. On my way out, I passed a family sitting outside. A little girl leaned into her mother's lap, giggling, while her mom gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I watched them for a moment, not with bitterness, not even with longing. It wasn't envy I felt. It was recognition, the quiet kind you get when you remember wanting something that no longer fits, like a coat you wore for years, until one day you shrug it off and realize it was never your color. Some families inherit peace. Others, like me, learn how to build it with their own two hands, on new ground, under no one's shadow. And sometimes that's the only kind that truly lasts. They say silence can be cruel, but sometimes it's where you find the clearest truth. For me, it wasn't about walking away in anger. It was about walking away with intention. When you've spent your life being the one who shows up, who smooths the wrinkles, who fills the gaps no one sees, there comes a time when you ask, who's showing up for me? I learned that setting boundaries doesn't make you cold, it makes you honest. And if honesty makes others uncomfortable, maybe it's because they've benefited from your silence for too long. Family, in its healthiest form, should be a place where your presence is not just tolerated, but cherished. If that's not the case, it's not betrayal to protect your peace. It's self-respect. Maybe you've been the invisible one at the table. Maybe your kindness has been turned into currency, your silence mistaken for consent. If so, this story was for you. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose your own peace over your family's approval? Have you ever walked away, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally cared about yourself? Let's talk about it. Drop a comment below, just type 1 if this story hit home for you, or tell me what city you're watching from. If it didn't resonate, I'd still love to hear why this space is for every voice. And if you want more stories like this, real, raw, and rooted in truth, don't forget to subscribe. Your voice matters here, and I'll be right here with the next story that just might feel a little too familiar.